Hey guys, welcome back to Darkhorse Paranormal. In this episode, we'll be talking about Islington House Children's Centre, also known as the Liverpool Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. Also, if you would kindly like, share and subscribe to our channel, any help is much appreciated and it helps our channel grow so we can give and do more content. On the 19th of April 1883, the Liverpool Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children was formed. At this time, Liverpool was going through a social deprivation and hardship. A local banker that went by the name of Thomas Angrew was behind its formation. He took inspiration from the New York Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. He discovered that when he visited there in 1881. At the time, in England, there was already a Society for Animal Welfare. However, England lacked a society that would protect children. The formation of the society was approved by a meeting of bankers, councillors, merchants and ministers at the local town hall. The following day, Liverpool Daily Post reported that Thomas Angrew told those present that Mendelssohn stopped at their home and sent their children out into the streets in all weathers and at all times. Such parents ceased to look after their offspring as creatures entrusted to them by God, and looked upon them simply as machines for bringing in a quantity of money. Such a society was bound to interfere and do something to protect the little helpless ones. Within Liverpool there had been such much debate about meddling in parent and child affairs, but the members of the society felt that the levels of cruelty within Liverpool were so great that they simply had to intervene. Through donations and society employed inspectors, they went out to seek children who were most in need. They then asked for help of the local police, magistrates and the local schools and the board to remove them from their situation. It was later that year a house in Nile Street, which was situated near the corner of Great George Street and Upper Parliament Street, was converted into a temporary shelter where the most vulnerable children could be housed. The house had a lived-in superintendent and a matron, with many of those accommodated there having been found wandering the streets. Within its first year, the LSPCC dealt with 378 cases. Many of them resulted in prosecution of parents who had sent them out to beg. Adults who found children begging or selling goods on the street at night were encouraged to try and persuade them to go to the shelter, where they would be given a supper, a bath and a bed, whilst inquiries were made into their parents. One example was two sisters, aged 7 and 10, who lived in Henderson Street in Dingle. They were found begging at night, telling officers they were too scared to go home to their father until they had a shilling each. Places for them were found for them at the industrial school in Everton Terrace. It was in July 1884 that the merchant William Cliff purchased the freehold of the house at 3 Islington Square. He donated it to the society to use as a shelter. He dedicated the building in the memory of his daughter Amy, who died in 1860, aged just 10. After refitting and furnishing, the shelter opened on the 16th of March 1885, with the opening speech being made by the Mayor, Alderman D. Radcliffe. He told those who gathered that if such good work was done at the small shelter in Nile Street, the Mayor told people to imagine how great the new building would be in helping the children escape neglect and danger that they faced. One of the earliest cases to be treated ended within tragedy due to the society not being able to intervene in time. 2-year-old Charlotte Graham was taken to the shelter on the 24th of April by an official after being alerted by the police to a seriously undernourished child in Great Homer Street, who was found home alone. Sadly, Charlotte died the same night, and her mother, who had been out drinking, was charged with manslaughter. Later that year, though, there was a far better outcome when a boy in Toxteth, who was kept in a sack in the attic, was rescued and flourished within the home. His father was sentenced to 4 months hard labour for neglect. It's here that I'll note, in the same month as the house was purchased by Mr. William Cliff, a similar society was set up in London, with Mr. Thomas Angrew being there at its launch. Further societies were later set up in Edinburgh, Glasgow and Manchester. I'll come to a stop after this bit and just share some information with yourselves. In 1889, they merged to form the National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children, but the Liverpool Society remained a separate identity, and it was agreed by both that they would not cross each other's boundaries. It's at this point me and the rest of the team at Darkhorse Paranormal will point you to the direction of the National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children, the NSPCC's website. This states on their page: the National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children is a British child protection charity founded as the Liverpool Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children by Thomas Angrew on the 19th of April 1883. The NSPC lobbies the government on issues relating to child welfare and creates child abuse public awareness campaigns since the 1980s. The charity has its statutory powers, allowing it to apply for help on behalf of the children at risk. In the 1990s, the charity's publication, Symptomatic Indicators, fueled panic in social workers who went and accused parents and removed children from homes when they should not have. Apparently, the NSPCC helps operate a helpline. The Paddington Bear character has participated charity to raise funds for the charity. The NSPCC operates telephone helplines. See, many people have asked me why is the big fascination with the Adam Cliff story a big thing to myself. Well, like the NSPCC created back in the day to stop social workers taking children for no reason, this still happens today. It's like myself, I was caught up in a situation that I lost custody for my daughter at birth from the hospital for about 2.5 years because of my relationship beliefs. However, we turned out to win. The local social services Liverpool lost this case. I was granted full custody within a week. We stretched the court out for the remainder of the 2 years, which proved that this social worker in particular, which I won't name, was handing false documents to the court, making documents up to the court. She was found with contempt of court, misleading court, unlawful removal, discrimination and prejudice. So, this thing still happens today. While I can't show you proof, because it was tied to the family court and not a public court, I'm going to show you a little bit of information, a little bit of digging, while we're at this point, about how bad they really actually were, and how bad the NSPCC will go to tell their staff and volunteers about their history. Now, I bring his attention to this that was publicised 7 years ago, and it was about the Liverpool Society for Protection for Cruelty to Children. It's about a mum's baby brother that wandered off from their home in nearby Leighton Street. He was taken to this shelter and handed in. However, the family were in that much deprived and poor, they still had to pay to release him back into their care. Another example from Liddon Liverpool on Facebook was a reply that he was talking about the shelter when Thomas Ann grew, and this member said, "Really interesting, I didn't know that, and I volunteer for Childline, which is part of the NSPCC. It's a brilliant organisation." Now, how brilliant is it really if they're not even telling their staff? Another shocking case apparently came to light in November the following year, when a child who was paralysed from the waist down and had the use of only one arm was left alone in a freezing house for 3 days while his parents attended a wake. They were sentenced to only 3 months imprisonment, while the 13-year-old boy had to be removed from the shelter to the workhouse hospital due to having him nearly starving to death. So this goes alone and says alone with a child who was paralysed from the waist down, only one arm. Why didn't they help feed him within the organisation or society? Why would they put him to a workhouse hospital? During the First World War, the Society apparently stepped in to help many children who were neglected due to the fathers being away on the front line. In 1916, 2 mothers were jailed and the children sent to industrial schools due to them drinking heavily and causing neglect. According to media reports, the children were found to be dirty, but even then action was delayed, initially due to the fathers being within the forces. There were unfortunately some occasions when the good nature of the LSPCC was abused, and it was abused as a babysitting service, apparently. Apparently on the 15th of April 1938, a woman took a 3-year-old girl to the shelter and asked if she could leave her there for a short while. When this request was refused, she left. But a few hours later, the same girl was found wandering alone in a busy shopping street. This time she was taken in by the shelter and an appeal put out for her parents to come forward. 2 days later, a woman went there and claimed the girl, offering little explanation for losing her daughter and not even reporting her missing. In 1944, the Islington house shelter was deemed unsuitable for longer-term stays, and the society announced that it was looking for a different property. 4 years later, the society moved into Linnet Lee in Linnet Lane, Egbert, and the Islington shelter closed. In 1953, the NSPCC announced that it wished to terminate an agreement with the LSPCC in terms of the areas in which they operated. To prevent any conflicts in the future, the LSPCC agreed to be absorbed into the NSPCC, and this was completed by January 1954. With Linnet Lee not being required, it was disposed of and later reopened as the Sydney House Boys Club. Now please bear in mind I've just showed you the NSPCC statement that can be found on their website, stating that they founded as the LSPCC. I've also showed you comments from volunteers to work for Childline and didn't know that this history was here that I am telling you. So it's up to you to figure out which one's the real one. As the NSPCC also states, even though it was founded as the LSPCC with Thomas Angrew, the founder is someone else. And why wouldn't they actually go in and say that they were part of this LSPCC, which was the first one around, opened other centres? You know, I wonder why. Is it because a boarding house may have been round the corner, as a school maybe? Was that related to another charity? The NSPCC went from strength to strength ever since, and in 1989 was given statutory powers under the Children's Act to apply for care and supervision orders, the only charity to have received this. So over the next part, I've just added a little bit of behind the scenes chatting and our opinions. Now, it's up to you as what you take from this. Like I said, things still don't add up. Things are still hidden, both from staff. You know, powerful pictures, like I've said before, from Liverpool. They didn't mention about having to buy your own kid back. So, let's go back to this, right? Just back to the beginning here. We got this story about this getting formed in 1883. Yeah, by Thomas Andrew. Why wasn't the NSPCC hiding it, or why were they hiding it later on within the story, stating that they made them close? You know, all we know is the NSPCC were tied in with social services, yeah. Which I can't help thinking all this podcast. Let's go back to the witch story, where kids were running the site of the witch. Yeah, I know this is before that this building was donated, but that's got to be some reason why. Are they already into it? Don't forget the house 63 and 61 were all joined together. You know, there was a big day nursery done by William Cliff, the same person that basically donated this building to the LSPCC.
But was that which one, whatever, was that the one that took the kids in?
What if, even before all this, there was still something going on through the Major Cliff family? You know, when she used to go out and collect rent and collect money, and then she would be seen looking around the house. Now, this isn't all fact, this is just us trying to piece pictures together. So, if that's the case, and it was still found with William and he thought his dad was doing the right thing, was she actually collecting money for the kids and then looking around for the kids as the lights were going on throughout the house?
Could have been, you don't know.
You know, and like this building, this was bad due to repair, the same as 61 and 63. They were both bad repair, needed fixing. It got closed by social services and everything else, yeah? As we know. So it's a little bit crazy to think of why is the building still standing? What was the building after the social workers closed it and the school closed it and had to build a new school? Was it really in that much of a bad repair? You know, I can't see it. I can't see this building being in that much of bad repair for the kids, that when it turned to a doctor's surgery, which was a while, but say 6-7 years ago it closed, the doctor in there stated the beds were still at the bottom basement that they used as the LSPCC. So if it was in that much of a bad repair, why would everything still be there, uncovered and hidden?
Did they use them beds with the children, like they got that life back here? You don't know.
We never know. See, this is what I'm trying to say. This nursery, this building got closed, but then become parents like you. So therefore it offered places for children. But the school was in that much of a bad repair. It was not safe for children. Which adds to more of a conspiracy of why it was really closed. The fact that social services still used the building, even though it was no good for kids, goes to show how bad social services actually think of children, especially with it being the YPRT, which was a child's respite. So they wouldn't just have kids there, they'd have kids staying in the building for overnight, a lot longer than what was as a nursery. Which goes to think. See, what you're seeing here is the back garden of not at the Adamcliff Day Nursery, but Everton Nursery School. See, they got rid of that to the left and trampled all the garden down after the recent fire. But why not that building? Why did they try and get rid of the history that William Cliff actually lived in that big house, what was the Everton Nursery, before moving on to Claremont? Why is the history all down? Everyone says this all should be here. Islington House should have a blue plaque, but these are all listed, 2 grade listed buildings. Eventually they will be pulled down if they're not protected, and it just hides more history and puts more history under the carpet. During our urban explore, we've noticed that there's cables running from nearby things over the walls and into the buildings, where homeless people are sleeping with mattresses, beds, quilts, Calga gas fires within inside the building. So it couldn't really have been in that much of a bad state if people are still squatting and still got carpets down and beds and sheets all over, you know. Why didn't they spend the money knowing where the building come from, the history come from, the family who donated the building, that the NSPCC even state helped fund, you know? All this come from the Cliff family who lived in this house. And it's just like they've shut down nurseries, moved in to try and hide things. You know? Things were put out, like by the Liverpool Echoes and Everton, like we said, which all didn't add up. The legacy of British slaves there. You know, stuff like that doesn't add up. So, why would social services basically and the local authorities condemn a building so unsafe for children? They have to go and buy a new one. But then use the building themselves. I'm sure they would have helped by creating history. Maybe.
Myself, I would have loved the building instead of going and redoing a new building. I would just redoing that building.
Yeah,
the history going in the building.
Yeah, you would, considering from this building created the schools, created Shore Start, created everything else, created the NSPCC basically because his dad was allowed to die.
Funded, so why didn't you just keep that building going instead of just leaving it to rock and roll?
As it stands now, the building's actually still owned by Liverpool City Council.
But is it though?
It actually says that on the census and the depths it's owned by Liverpool City Council as this date. So, social services is also Liverpool City Council. The signs are still on the doors. So, why can't they do something for it? These buildings are left to rot. Why? The history, the only thing I can think of is they don't want to talk about it.
Because they're more interested in taking children off people that don't deserve, like that really shouldn't have the children taken off them.
As you just stated, that went back to the LSPCC. So, what if, and this is a big one, what if Mr. Adam Cliff was the slave merchant, as we know, that used to bring us slaves over, that was owned by the NatWest, the Hartley's Bank, the Royal Bank of Scotland at the time? And what if he was housing his kids and these people and the slaves? What if that slaves all started off and created the organisation and the society that we know today within the workforce and the schools? Don't forget, the schools would have been on this block as well, from Mrs. Coleshaw, the Everton Road Academy. You know, there's a lot of schools, there's a lot of things throughout this whole building. What if there's a lot more that still needs to be uncovered? Questions still need to be asked. Like you said, social services taking kids away. Well, there's proof there that you did at the beginning. We still got proof ourselves that our kid was taken and brought. We won it back and it was all lying through court.
But it's always the innocent people that get the children's.
Yeah, it is.
None of these, like drug addicts, heroin addicts, alcoholics, nonces. Why do they still allow have their children? We are innocent people that look after their children, protect their children with all their heart, get dragged through court right till the last, and just
right to the last breath. Exactly. And then we were lucky, we had King's Councils, because ours was a landmark case.
Yeah,
we had Supreme Court of Justice and everything
involved. But we still
involved.
lost out really on them 2.5 years, because the social worker we had was more interested in what was going on in our relationship than she was for the baby's own well-being.
That much so, she actually lied. Even, it's just pathetic, you know, so it still goes today and still goes to show that social services still rats and will take your kids for the fuck of it. Don't forget, a social worker though was rumoured to make a $7,000 pay rise a year for each kid that she successfully removes from the home, isn't it?
I get that, but then why take innocent children?
Because, listen to me, this is their own pay game. I don't think they actually take innocent children. What I think they do, they take the children that are more, how can you say it, more likely to get adopted out. If they won't go after a kid with autism, they won't go after a kid with a medical condition, they'll be there to support, because they're not going to get that out. Therefore, the social worker won't make that $7,000.
Saying that though, it's like that one person, you know, I'm not going to use no names because I haven't got permission to do this, but a child, something wrong with the brain or something, weren't growing properly, meant to have an operation before they were 2, and that child's now 5, and that child was brought for adoption, and then when it was brought for adoption, because the woman who adopted the child had a stroke, the child then got put back in the system. I've not checked this out properly.
But also nearly got put back in her own care, your own parents' care.
Well, at the moment, as far as I'm aware, if that person's still fighting to this day. It's been 3 years now she's been fighting for her children.
So, it still goes on. And
They just like to hit innocent people.
but let's look back to this. People are sitting there back with the LSPCC saying that they had their kids go away and had to pay to get their kids back. So if they go for the money, the social workers will also go for the money.
Social workers never change. I'm sorry, but no. I don't trust no social worker now.
I don't think you can. You know, you can't, because look at all this. Everything's hidden, everything's moan. This isn't a dig. Yeah, you could be a social service watching this or whatever, but just think, how? Why? This is this all about when we've gone on about social service and how bad it is.
Don't wrong. When we did go through that case, we did have a few that were supportive, who did help us out, but then we had that one at the very beginning that started all the bad rumours, turned everyone against us, even down to family.
Yeah, but I'll stop you on this one, right? Yeah, but that's so you get rid of your family support network, as we found out.
Yeah.
How about, what if... Oh, I forgot what I was going to say.
See, we would love to speak out about our court case, but we can't, because then that's putting our children at risk, which is disgusting really, because we should be able to speak out.
Basically, we're allowed to do it and we can sue, we've been told we can, but we got to drag the kids through a public court, and because the children are still at that age, then they'll get us and state that we're bringing the kids into public attention with their names.
Which is a pure utter joke.
So one case opens and another case starts. You know, I'll probably get silenced for this, to be fair.
And I don't care, I'd never trust social working again.
So it goes to show, as it's stated on their website, NSPCC intervened with childcare and Childline to limit these social workers that ran off and done their own gains and took kids for the fun of it and removed kids for the fun of it. But it still happens today. And it's always going to happen, because people get greed. And when they get greed with an idea of moving up the scale with a £7 wage pack at the end, apparently, then why? Why would you do that? I remember our case, that it was that good, and we had to get other kids brought into our case, and the social worker done that much of a hard case, and she wrote it all down that well. When she got summoned to court, she ran. She left, actually, for part this. She actually left the UK, as far as we all found and our legal team found, and she was no longer to be seen within the UK to escape coming to court. Now, these are the people that the authority were employing. Now, I'm not saying here all social workers are the same, because they're not. But it goes to think that the tick boxes are still the same, and things need to change within the authority.
Not just the authorities, it's the people that sign off it as well. They don't even read it properly.
Yeah.
They found out in court.
That was the AMG that looked at it, signed it off. Yes. However, but bear in mind, the social worker for us had information that she never included in that to get the child to be removed. Now, they both stated in court that if they'd seen that paperwork, they would not have removed the children. So,
why not sue her? Why did they let her carry on going working and moving in baby unit as well?
Yeah, she then went on to another neighbouring unit to pass assessments to see if you can work with children, or is the mum or the parent good enough, knowing that she's done this and lied through her teeth. And that was all because that baby unit was her best mates. So yeah, I have brought it a little bit into public. I don't care. But it goes back to show you how much social services do mess up. How much lies there is still here, still left to be uncovered? What's the truth and what's... Yes, but what's the truth and what's not within this whole story with Adam Cliff and William Cliff? Where does it all begin? We've just read documents basically stating that the LSPCC formed into the LSPCC and it gave up all rights. However, still on the LSPCC website today, it states its creator, which I showed you before, formed from the LSPCC under Thomas Angrew. Now, you look at their charitable cause, fair dues, they've got a different name. But if they've come in and took on the LSPCC, like if McDonald's take over KFC and McDonald's buy KFC out, then one will form into the other and the chairman must still be the same person who owns it. But it doesn't have this with the NSPCC for some reason, but we just found that out, that little screenshot off their website, which states basically Thomas Angrew created the NSPCC.
Well, who's he leave it to?
A banker, a slave merchant, created the NSPCC. They pulled kids off streets, money was going everywhere. You were making families pay back for the money, paying back for their own kid. I thought this was all set up to help the kids.
No.
It's definitely not, it's greed.
100% greed.
I think was technically slightly exposing a little bit and exposing them. Well, it's been a little bit of emotional chat. Oh, and a little emotional one on the Islington House episode. However, it's nearly coming to the close of the whole series regarding Adam Cliff. We'll be back soon and making more with our next series with Vampires of the UK. Please go over and check out our trailer that we have and give it a like, a subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss out. Till next time.